Ed did not expect Creffin's most loyal aide to come directly to the Arkan Island. Their faces were indeed familiar to him, but he did not feel happy to meet them here. While walking slowly towards him, they then said, "It is an honor to meet you again, young Master Ed." Hearing their respectful call, Ed then sarcastically said, "You still address me as young master, even though I've been excommunicated. I should be the one thanking you for that." With a sharp gaze directed at him, Caden then said, "We have heard stories about you. We came here on the orders of Master Creffin. Our purpose is to assassinate you." Ed's pupils sharpened at that, but he was then stunned when he saw the two of them suddenly bowing towards him. They said that they were sorry. Their loyalty was filled with hatred towards him. Therefore, with this dagger that has deadly poison, they intend to kill him, because he seems like a different person. He has changed from an innocent boy to someone who rules the Rothtailor residence. But the more they dig into his daily life and the Academy people's judgment of him, they rediscovered the intelligence he used to have as a child. Now they realized that he had returned to being the true heir. Nox said regarding the details he would explain directly to Creffin. Caden also begged him to reclaim the honor of the Rothtailor name, and begged him to return to being the rightful heir. Ed was silent for a moment. Hearing that, the atmosphere suddenly became silent with the patter of rain pouring down on them, but Ed simply did not believe the words that came out of their mouths. He told them not to try to deceive him. They grinned cruelly at that. They also felt that he had grown. They didn't mince words anymore. Caden then opened his cloak and took out his weapon. Caden had the nickname of the Eagle Knight. He attacked using the wind dagger, but his attack didn't seem too dangerous for him. Ed could skillfully avoid all of his attacks, but he then felt danger nearby. Nox was already right beside him and launched an attack towards him. Nox had the nickname the Fire Bear Knight. He attacked using a fire mace, but his attack was quickly dodged by Ed after he reacted. Not only that, he then launched a counterattack at the two of them, but unfortunately Caden could easily block his attack. Ed seemed to be facing a very tough opponent at the moment. The two of them were the ones responsible for carrying out the dirty deeds of the Rothtailor family. Nox then angrily asked him, "Do you remember Meliana, the poor girl who lost Om of her eyes as a mere plaything of yours? She is my daughter." Nox's heart burned with anger as he recalled that tragic incident, accompanied by the fire of anger that was now burning in his heart. Nox then cast fire magic and cast it on him. The fire burned the place where Ed was standing at the moment, but he was then surprised when he heard Ed was still able to speak calmly. After Ed recalled, he felt that it did happen, but he then told him that revenge was a pointless thing. A barrier was seen enveloping Ed at this time. His fire attack just now did not hurt him at all. Nox then said that he himself understood that revenge only left a sense of emptiness, but that was not something he wanted to hear from him. Nox then attacked him again with his mace. Seeing that, Ed then quickly moved to dodge. Hearing his words just now, Ed felt that it made sense. Caden was quite amazed to see Ed's current action. He felt that he had improved a lot. Unfortunately, Nox's mace was enveloped in magic. His attacks were impossible to withstand. Caden praised him for being able to avoid it, but if he was hit by just one attack, then he would be finished. Ed also knew that. Nox's attack did not stop there. He then attacked him again repeatedly, although Ed could dodge his attacks, but he seemed to be struggling at the moment. Seeing that, Caden then said, "The bow in your hand will only hinder you. It makes your dodging movements redundant, and you have difficulty seeing things around." Without Ed realizing it, Nox actually forced him to dodge towards the edge of the cliff. Now there was no place for him to avoid his attacks. Not wasting it, Nox then attacked him again, but Ed was still very calm at the moment. No panic at all could be seen on him. Ed said that he knew, before Nox's attack could even land, a dagger suddenly pierced the back of his body. At this time, it made him spit out a mouthful of blood and couldn't continue his attack anymore. Caden then worriedly called out to him when he saw that. He was really shocked and confused at this time, looking at the dagger that pierced Nox's body at this time. He wondered, was it psychokinesis, or perhaps, spirit magic? Realizing that, Caden then concluded, earlier he blocked Nox's attack using basic defense magic that could only stop magic. He planned to lure him closer, then prepare a counterattack. Caden was surprised when he came to that conclusion, but Ed's attack did not stop there. He then called Mug. Right at that moment, a violent explosion then occurred on Nox's body. Caden then anxiously and worriedly called Nox when he saw it. When his vision was obscured by smoke, he was then shocked when he saw several arrows attacking towards him. although he could react quickly, but one of the arrows still hit his leg. Caden was really confused at this time. How could he attack from inside the explosion? It was because Ed had the blessing of fire spirit, which made him have a temporary high immunity to fire. The explosion didn't hurt him at all even though he was very close to it. Caden really didn't understand at the moment, what exactly did a boy like him go through. He also suggested, next time, he should aim for the vital points rather than the lower body, but unfortunately, there was no next time. Caden then repeatedly slashed his dagger towards him. The slash of his dagger created an effect similar to wind blade magic. It completely bombarded the place where Ed was standing at the moment. As the smoke it caused slowly dissipated, Ed was then seen with his body covered in blood, but no fatal wounds could be seen on his body. Seeing that, Caden knew that he had used Nox as a shield and avoided a fatal attack. Unfortunately, that was enough up to here. Caden then moved quickly and launched an attack on him, but before his attack could even land, he suddenly felt something from behind him. Caden then flashed back to when Ed shot his arrow. He was really shocked at this time. He was shocked that Ed had even planned it that far. The arrow that missed earlier turned out to be an intermediate level water spirit, Leisha. Not giving him time to react, Leisha then smothered him strongly. It made Caden's body become limp, which made him unable to hold his weapon anymore. It also made it difficult for him to breathe because he felt like he was drowning in water at the moment. Seeing that, someone secretly took one of his daggers, and something surprising then happened. Nox, who previously could only lie down like a dead person, was secretly standing behind Ed and was about to attack him with Caden's dagger. Even though he should have been unconscious from the internal injuries and burns he suffered, the Fire Bear Knight, who prides himself on having seen and experienced everything that can happen on the battlefield, managed to stay conscious. This was something that even Ed Rothtailor couldn't have expected. It was obvious from his expression that Ed was very shocked at the moment, but he was able to quickly react, and immediately cast defensive magic to block his attack. It successfully blocked Nox's attack and made him unable to move his dagger an inch. Not only that, Ed also activated the blessing of the Windstorm, which had the effect of launching an unexpected attack that made the enemy blown away with a gust of wind. But, even though the attack was so powerful that it created an effect like splitting the ground it passed through, Nox was still able to stand in place and not be blown away by it. The atmosphere suddenly became silent at this time with Ed staring at Nox. His dagger was only a few inches away from piercing Ed's head, but it seemed like an endless distance to Nox now. After a few moments, they then both fell down, and could not maintain their self-consciousness anymore. Seeing that, Ed then sighed with relief. That seemed to be a really difficult battle for him. It felt completely different from when he fought the first-year students. Armed with his strong fighting spirit, Nox then woke up from his stupor. Seeing Ed, who had not yet killed him, he then made a request to him. "Can you kill me with just one strike?" Ed did not immediately answer and walked slowly towards him. Ed said he was the one who should say that. Nox was then confused and shocked, and Ed suddenly handed him the Caden's dagger. Ed explained, because the two of them were sent here. He felt like his father had decided to kill him. Although today he still survived, he knew that he would eventually die too, even if he managed to defeat the two of them. But if this cycle is not broken, he prefers to die here. Maybe it will only give a sense of emptiness, but this is still a meaningful action. At least, he will not be bound by the chains of revenge anymore. Nox was stunned to hear that. He could not process what he just heard just now. Ed told him to think of it as a small gift for loyal vassal of the Rothtailor family like him. Nox paused for a moment, seeing the small smile on Ed's face. After making up his mind, Nox then firmly thrust the dagger into Ed's body. It made Ed spit out a mouthful of blood, and right at that moment, Janica then came without knowing what was going on there. She apologized to Ed for coming late. The class today finished a little later than usual, but her mind suddenly became chaotic when she saw the incident in front of her at this time. It was the incident when Nox pushed Ed's body into the ravine. Seeing Ed's bloodied body and the blood spurting from his mouth, Janica then frantically ran towards him. She then screamed hysterically when she saw Ed fall into the ravine. Janica tried with all her might to reach Ed's hand, but unfortunately, Ed had fallen too deep. She then could only helplessly watch the person she loved fall deeper towards the bottom of the ravine, inversely proportional to the raindrops that were now drenching her. Janica's heart seemed to be burning with anger at the moment. Seeing Janica who suddenly came, Nox then felt panicked. He cursed. There was an eyewitness, but he was then confused and surprised when he suddenly couldn't move his body. but what made him more surprised was what he saw at this time. Seeing the terrifying aura and magic circle that emerged from Janika's body, Nox wondered, what the hell is that? The Fire Bear Knight, who prides himself on having seen and experienced everything that can happen on the battlefield, was confronted with something he could never have imagined, a being higher than even a high-level spirit, a being that exists only one time for each element in the natural world. What he was witnessing at this time was the ritual of summoning the Supreme Spirit, and also, a girl who commanded that spirit. With a ferocious look in her eyes, Janika then asked him, "Do you realize what sins you have committed?" A huge magic circle. Who knows how many people can understand the meaning of that very complicated magic circle? A genius spirit sorcerer who has the experience of summoning the right arm of the Supreme Dark Spirit Glaskin, is now exerting all her power and creating a scene filled with anger and sorrow, like the sun burning the earth is probably a suitable sentence to describe his power. With a tail bigger than the royal palace, the spirit that is said to have burned the Apeth Mountains in the mystical era, he is the supreme fire spirit, Theorphus. His silhouette could be clearly seen when one looked up at the northern forest at this moment, a sight that brought terrible terror. The power of the supreme spirit was so powerful, even summoning his right arm was enough to scorch the entire northern forest. One did not need to think hard to understand the enormous magic circle that was intertwined in the sky. Just standing in front of this ominous energy alone made anyone understand the impending doom, the inevitability of death. Janika then turned to him, and asked, "Are you aware of the sin you have committed?" Right after that, Nox's body suddenly stiffened, he then screamed in pain, he felt an incredible heat, he felt like his body was on fire at the moment, but fortunately someone then quickly saved him. No, more precisely it was a spirit, she was Marilda. She was in her strongest form at the moment. Marilda then told Nox to quickly leave there, with pain all over his body. Nox then confusedly and surprisedly looked in her direction. Marilda then once again told him to quickly leave there if he really wanted to live. She also told him to report everything he had experienced. Hearing that, Nox then quickly left there while carrying Caden on his back. Seeing that, Janika, who was on the verge of losing control, then asked her, "What are you doing?" with a terrible aura surrounding her. Janika told her to stay out of her way, but Marilda completely ignored her words. She instead walked closer to her. When Janika was about to cancel her summoning, she was then surprised when she saw Marilda not disappear in front of her. Marilda knew very well what she wanted to do. She then asked her, "This is strange, right?" She told her to calm down and think carefully. Marilda said that her appearance here was not because she was summoned by her. Janika was then shocked to hear that. She then realized something. A fact that raised a hope in her heart. Meanwhile on the northern beach, under the cliff where Ed fell, a hand slowly emerged from the sea at this time. It was certainly Ed's hand. He then recalled his conversation with Lortel at that time. Lortel at that time asked about his progress towards magic engineering. He had asked her for a lot of materials and magic engineering supplies in the past few days. Ed replied, "In the end of winter break, I spent every day to improve my magic engineering skills. To put it simply, it was a great success. I created a legendary grade magic engineering item. The item was called Olheim's Hourglass, which had the effect of restoring the user's physical condition to a few seconds before, including removing all wounds and damage received. The item was a single-use item, so it was destroyed immediately after he used it. The item was also the reason why he was still able to survive now. Although the wounds he suffered from falling off the cliff and the curse of the inscription of deadly venom had been removed, but the time that could be turned back by the item was only a few seconds back. The wounds he suffered from his battle with Caden and Nox were still there. The wounds were very painful when the sea water seeped into them. His body temperature had also dropped dramatically at this time. The situation on the cliff looked bad when he glanced in that direction. That's why he summoned Marilda. But he was so battered that he himself didn't know if it worked or not. Ed didn't expect to use it so soon. It did feel sad that all the efforts for a year were reduced to a single-use item, but thanks to that, he managed to live. Ed felt that the causality confirming magic that the Crefin possessed was really troublesome. If he managed to defeat Caden and Nox and was still alive, Ed knew Crefin would only continue to use that large amount of mana to repeat his causality confirming magic, and it would continue until he would find a future where Ed died. Therefore, he had to die at least once. Ed didn't know what reason Crefin wanted to kill him, but once he had made sure he was dead, he would most likely lose interest in him for a while. Ed realized it was difficult for Crefin to bring his subordinates to the Arkan Island without a clear reason. Plausible reasons could be helping Tanya with her tasks as she's busy with the recent student council president election, or helping her negotiations regarding the sage's scroll. Once those things were over, the loyal subordinates, he said, would automatically return. In short, once Ed stays dead until the student council president election or the sage's scroll negotiation are over, he will be able to survive, but the problem now is, his body does not want to obey. Ed can only lie limply on the ground at the moment, but, he was then surprised when he saw something coming towards him. It turned out to be the high fire spirit, Tarkan. Seeing that, Ed then tried to sit up. His whole body was already filled with injuries to the point that he felt like dying now. He was grateful that she could find him. He then thanked her, but Ed was then surprised when Janica suddenly hugged him tightly. The patter of rain that poured down on them made the scene more dramatic. Janica hugged him so tightly like she didn't want to let go. Facing that, Ed then said to her, "It seems like I always worry you." Ed then apologized to her for that. Janica sadly replied yes. After that, Ed then hugged her back. They continued to hug tightly under the patter of rain that fell on them. After a while, the two of them then looked for a cave nearby for shelter. After making a campfire, Ed then explained everything to Janica. Hearing that, Janica then concluded, "So, you think it's better to keep avoiding them until the election is over, because it's more beneficial in the long run." Then, Janica then enthusiastically said that she would bring daily necessities for him in the meantime. She told him not to worry. Hearing that, Ed then thanked her for always helping him. Seeing Janica who continued to hug him, Ed then said that his injury was starting to hurt again. Janica finally realized her behavior. She then immediately let go of his hug. She apologized. Hugging him somehow made her feel comfortable, but Janica then realized that her words earlier felt inappropriate. While blushing, she then asked him to forget her words earlier. Ed could only be silent to see that. After that, Ed then looked out of the cave where they were sheltered. Seeing that the rain did not stop, Ed muttered that there were still many things he had to do. If someone asked about the current state of the slothful Lucy, people might answer, as usual, she did what she usually did, but it was different from that conjecture. Lucy's current action is waiting. The difference is, she doesn't feel bored, she feels more comfortable. It is not difficult to imagine the daily life of the owner of the cabin she used to live in, walking through the grass, checking extinguished campfire, kicking the wooden support blocks a few times to ensure their sturdiness, and going to the drying rack to dry the soaked laundry. After that, he would move the rusting tools under the tarp, wring the water out of the clothes, and return to the cabin to greet Lucy. Lucy smiling slightly at the recollection. Ed's life was filled with twists and turns, but he would always come back to this place. Once he turned on the lights, sat in front of the table, and started reading the magic engineering book. He would eventually fall asleep by the fireplace, listening to the sound of the rain, the crackling of the fireplace, and the occasional sound of the pages being turned by Ed. Lucy really likes her day-to-day life. When Lucy was busy recalling those memories, she suddenly felt a strange manna and smelled blood. Lucy felt very upset because her fun moment had been disturbed. She then recalled when Ed thanked her for taking good care of the cabin. After remembering that, Lucy then put on her witch hat again, and flew up while yawning, but before she could even look for the source of the smell of blood, someone suddenly asked her at this time, "Who are you?" "That person is Knox." Knox then introduced himself to her. He begged her to please help him. He was suffering from serious injuries. He said that he stumbled in the forest. His partner was attacked by a wild animal in his throat. But before Knox could finish his sentence, Lucy suddenly interrupted him. She said that she would help him, but Knox's body suddenly stiffened at this time. With a sharp look directed at him, Lucy continued, "If you're honest, I'll save you. What were you doing out here?" Meanwhile, on the cliff where Ed fought against Caden and Knox a while ago, several people later arrived there after someone reported the incident. Seeing a dagger lying there, Professor Plubane then picked it up. After observing the dagger for a moment, he knew that the dagger was covered with the inscription of deadly venom. Very rare high-level inscription, so rare, this inscription has only been seen by one out of many people in their entire lives. He wondered, why did things like this keep happening when I was on duty? While looking down the cliff, Professor Plubane then said, "There is absolutely no magic in the inscription of deadly venom, only traces are left. That means this dagger has been used, and that means someone was killed by it." Professor Plubane then summarized the situation. we were supposed to meet here to help Ed in summoning his spirit, but when you arrived, what you saw was Ed who had been stabbed by the dagger." Janica confirmed it. It happened like that. Janica seemed to be the one who reported the incident to the academy. This might be unpleasant for her, but Professor Plubane then asked her to please recall. She said that she saw the culprit. Janica confirmed it. She clearly saw two retainers from the Roth-Taylor family, Caden and Knox. Hearing that, Professor Plubane immediately understood. He then said that as soon as morning came he would immediately inform the dean, but, he then felt something from behind him. Seeing the silhouette of someone walking slowly towards them, he then asked, "What about that student?" But he was then surprised when he saw the student suddenly disappear. The student was of course Lucy. They both looked shocked when they saw her. Realizing her mood, Janica then tried to calm her down. She advised her to talk about this in the cabin, but Lucy didn't care at all about her words. She said that she had caught them, the culprits who had killed Ed, the Roth-Taylor retainers, Caden and Knox. After saying that, Lucy then walked past them and picked up the bow that Ed had dropped. Lucy's heart was covered with anger at this time. With Ed's bow in her hand, a very powerful aura then came out of Lucy's body. Seeing that, Janica then anxiously called her. But before she could say anything to her, Lucy had already left there. The aura released by Lucy was so powerful that it overwhelmed Professor Plubane. He himself was surprised by that. Janica then said that they had to immediately pursue Lucy. Hearing that, Professor Plubane then confusedly asked what she meant, but Janica said that there was no time to explain. They had to move quickly. Before this got worse, Janica's concern was not excessive. While carrying Knox and Caden, Lucy then flew to the Ophilus Hall. In the middle of her journey, Lucy then muttered, "The Roth-Taylor retainers. They've been sticking around recently under the guise of assisting with work, serving the Roth-Taylor family." At that time, when Lucy saw the two of them in the cabin and heard that they were both from the Roth-Taylor family, Knox said that they were not suspicious people. They entered the academy with clear permission. They were here to help Tanya Roth-Taylor, but his words backfired this time. While loudly calling Tanya, Lucy then clenched her fists tightly. Right at that moment, a very powerful explosion then occurred in the Ophilus Hall. After landing in that destroyed dormitory, Lucy then asked, "Where are you?" In the midst of her wrath, someone then called her name. She was Maya, with all the Ophilus Hall maids standing behind her. She then asked Lucy, what exactly happened. Realizing that Lucy was not behaving well now, Maya then activated the Ophilus Hall magic formation. Various magic circles then appeared around Lucy. Right after that, Maya then once again asked her, "Miss Lucy, what is this?" Lucy just looked at her coldly at her question. She did not feel at all afraid even though various magic circles were enveloping her surroundings at this time. Maya was then shocked when she saw the magic formation controller in her hand suddenly showing signs of disintegration. It was like it was unable to withstand the weight of the magic power it was carrying at the moment. With a terrible aura surrounding her, Lucy then ordered them to bring Tanya here. Seeing them just silent, Lucy then once again ordered them to bring Tanya here. Meanwhile elsewhere in the Ophilus Hall, a fight was happening. At the moment, it was a duel between two students. Seeing one of the students who could only sit down at the moment, it seemed that the match was over. He then said to his opponent that it was a good match. The loser turned out to be Elvira. She snorted at his words. She thought it was sarcasm. The fight was really one-sided. She asked, "Beating a second-year senior has really boosted your confidence, huh?" The person fighting with her at this time turned out to be Wade. Wade smiled slightly at her words. He also realized it was too early to celebrate if he had only defeated a few second-year students. While glancing behind him, he then said, "There are still 6 seniors left." Zix was silent for a moment. Hearing that, he could only sigh at his arrogance. The senior students were really surprised at this time. Although one-on-one combat was not Elvira's forte, but she was still a top-ranked student in the alchemy faculty, so they were surprised to see her lose against him. Besides, in the first-year magic faculty there is said to be a genius named Joseph. People say he is the top-ranked student in his faculty, but, even so, the one who holds the throne as the top-ranked student in his batch is still him, Wade Kellamore, the heir of the Kellamore swordsmanship family. They suddenly became doubtful at this time. They thought, maybe he could defeat Zix too, but, before that long-awaited battle even began, they were then surprised when they felt the building they were in suddenly shook like an earthquake. They also heard a loud bang nearby. They felt panic at this time. They wondered, was it an enemy attack? Are we better off running away? right at that time, a large explosion then occurred in one of the rooms in the Ophilis Hall. Hearing that, they then immediately stopped their fighting. They realized the gravity of the situation. Wade then said, "First we have to find the head maid first," but Zix rejected his plan, because he realized it was too late for that. When Zix looked out the window, he then saw Maya and her maids petrified like statues. The reason why they were petrified like that was of course because of Lucy's actions. She used celestial magic of the time domain, time prison, on them. It seemed absurd, but in this world, there are some geniuses who are able to easily replicate the astral magic they see with simple experiments. While others had to dedicate their entire lives to studying it, Lucy was really unstoppable at the moment. She then once again ordered them to bring Tanya here. Right at this moment, Zix finally found out the cause of the explosion. He was confused and surprised to find out that Lucy was the cause. Seeing him standing in front of the door, a maid then called him and told him to come towards her. The maid tried to evacuate the students from there at this time. While running away from the scene, Zix then asked the maid, what exactly happened. The maid explained, "The head maid has lost, they are really messed up now." If Miss Lucy's words are true, the third-year student of the magic faculty, Ed Roth-Taylor, has been killed. Zix was then shocked to hear the news. He suddenly stopped his steps at this time. The maid continued, "They said the murderers were retainers from the Roth-Taylor family." Hearing that, Wade then asked, "Does that mean the real culprit is Tanya Roth-Taylor?" Realizing that Zix was just standing silently behind, the two of them then confusedly looked in his direction. With a glum face, Zix told them to leave first. They were then surprised to hear that. The maid then told him about the seriousness of the situation. She was really dizzy seeing his attitude. Wade also asked, "Why did your attitude suddenly become like this? Don't tell me that it's about revenge or something." He then invited him to evacuate from here as soon as possible, but Zix did not care about their words at all. He said he would evacuate when it was time. For now, he invited them to go first. He apologized to them about this. He then ran as hard as he could towards a place. After a while, he then arrived at the door of one of the rooms. Without further ado, Zix immediately broke the door by kicking it. When Zix saw the room, this was exactly what he expected. 5 minutes after the first bang, the maids had searched all the rooms in Ophilis Hall. They even searched the basement, but even so, they still couldn't find Tanya. So, Zix concluded, the only place that might be her hiding place was. Zix then opened the door of a nearby closet, and sure enough, Tanya was hiding in there. Her body was shaking violently. She looked very scared at the moment. She was confused. Why did everything come to this? Actually, what really happened? Seeing her, Zix felt dizzy, although all the clues pointed to Tanya, but he felt that this did not make sense. Thanks to Ed, Tanya's reputation in the academy had skyrocketed. Even though Tanya seemed to hold a grudge against Ed, accusing her of being the one who ordered Ed's murder seemed strange. Zix was silent for a moment thinking about it. He then told Tanya to listen to him carefully. He told her to answer his questions as honestly as possible. With an intimidating fierce look, Zix then asked her, "Did you order the murder of Ed Sr.?" Tanya was very frightened by the accusation. She then immediately denied it. She even went so far as to swear that she didn't do it. Although her answer was not something he could fully believe, but Zix realized, if it continued like this, Tanya would definitely die. Thinking about Ed's death also made his heart feel empty, but, right now there were too many things he couldn't understand. This situation was very confusing for him. Zix thought maybe not interfering was the right thing to do right now, but, Zix then gave her his cloak. He said he would listen to her full story later. For now, he told her to keep hiding here. He also told her how serious the situation was now. If she went to the square, she could die. Zix knew there were only two scenarios that would happen if he just kept quiet without interfering: Tanya getting killed, and Lucy ending up getting her hands dirty with blood, neither of which was something Ed wanted. So Zix decided to stop Lucy now. But, Zix was then surprised when he heard someone ask him at this time, "Do you still not understand too, Senior Zix?" He turned out to be Wade. I don't know when he was there, but certainly, he was not here to cooperate with him. While brandishing his sword, Wade then said he would take Tanya by force. The situation outside the dormitory was still so chaotic and intense at the moment. While carrying two retainers from the Roth-Taylor family on both sides, Lucy arbitrarily used her magic to bombard the Ophilis Hall. No one could stop her. Those who tried to stop her would be petrified like statues right after that. Clebius then felt terrified when he saw the human statue that almost hit him, looking at the face on the statue. He then realized that it was a third-year student, the top-ranked student of the alchemy faculty, Dorothy. Clebius was then shocked to see that. He was very frightened to know that even third-year students had been defeated. He then could only stare in confusion at Lucy, who was arrogantly standing on the Ophilus Hall at this time. Feeling his gaze, Lucy then coldly stared back at him. Clebius was very frightened to see that. He then with all his might immediately fled from there. Clebius complained why this could happen. He didn't understand. This was not his purpose for coming to Sylvania. He also cursed. Was there no peace in his life? He was confused. What really happened? But, in the midst of his escape, he suddenly tripped over a small stone. It made him fall to the ground, but Clebius did not try to stand up again. He seemed to have no enthusiasm for life at this time. Amidst the patter of rain that soaked him, Clebius continued to curse and blame his own helplessness. He admitted that he was afraid if something like that appeared. In his moment of depression, someone then walked towards him and asked him, "What are you doing, you useless Clebius? Has your nature become so low that you are as low as the ground?" Clebius was then surprised to hear that. It was a voice that was quite familiar to him. She turned out to be Elvira. Seeing her, Clebius confusedly asked, "Aren't you practicing sparring?" Elvira said that it was over and she had run out of all the reagents now. Therefore she had to go to the lab to get more reagents. While looking at Lucy, Elvira then said to him, "In a situation like this, if not us, the top-ranked students, who else can stop that monster? If the situation is like this, someone should hold her for at least 30 minutes, until the academy staff arrived here." Seeing Clebius who was lying limp there, she then asked, "You don't seem to be able to move your legs." Elvira told him to quickly run to the professor's building if his energy had recovered. If there were academy staff there, immediately ask them to come here. After saying that, Elvira then walked away from there. Clebius could only be silent watching her departure. Elvira's words earlier seemed to surprise him very much. He then glanced at his sword. Clebius again blamed his helplessness. He felt that he was really pathetic, useless trash. He then asked himself, "What the hell are you doing, you idiot?" In the midst of the rain that poured on him, unable to stand up again, Clebius could only lie on the ground while cursing himself. Meanwhile in the hiding place, Janica came there at this time and reported the incident that had just happened. She was very anxious. The academy staff had already left first. Marilda was also moving there, but Lucy had already found out before she explained the situation. She didn't know what would happen now. Hearing the news, Ed calmly asked, "So, where is Lucy now?" Janica replied, "She went to the Ophilus Hall to look for Tanya." Ed was silent for a moment hearing that. With his body wrapped in bandages, Ed then stood up with difficulty. He understood now. He felt like he should go there himself. A little flashback of Lucy's past life. At that time it was raining heavily on the hut where her grandfather lived. Seeing Lucy grimacing in pain on the bed, he then said, "When you are soaked and rolling in the rain, it's natural to feel pain and discomfort, but make sure you understand that feeling well." Lucy, who was feverish, could only feel confused at her grandfather's words. Her grandfather explained, "Because as time goes by, you will definitely realize that lying sick like this or even being physically injured will be an increasingly rare occurrence for you in the future. Those who are less fortunate than you, those who dedicate their entire lives to be able to achieve what you can easily achieve, will continue to pile up behind you." Glock's words were clearly represented at this time. Even though the academy students had combined their strength to attack her, but it was useless. They couldn't even penetrate her defense magic. They were then surprised when they heard Lucy calmly ask, "Do you still not want to take her out?" After the smoke that came out from their attack slowly faded, Lucy's silhouette then slowly appeared, and to their surprise, Lucy was not injured at all. With anger rising in her heart, Lucy then said that she would look for it herself if that was the case. Right after that, such a powerful magic power then appeared around her. This scene clearly reflected the words that Glock said to her at that time. "In the future, soon you may become a powerful and unrivaled mage, so powerful that no one can hope to compete with you." While the academy students both directed their attacks at her, Lucy then casually went downstairs, but no attacks were thrown at her at this time. It was because all the students who were about to attack her were suddenly petrified into statues at this time. While walking past them, Lucy then recalled her grandfather's words. "But because of your talent, life will be boring, and everything seems to be in vain. Even pain will undoubtedly become a distant memory." But, Lucy felt the opposite at this time. This was very painful in her heart. She felt that her grandfather had lied to her. As Lucy continued to step, she then triggered something when stepping on one of the floors there. Right after that, a large explosion then appeared where she was standing. After the smoke caused by the explosion slowly disappeared, Lucy's figure then slowly came into view. The explosion could not hurt her at all. She was quite surprised to see that. She thought it was a brilliant move. The person who caused the explosion turned out to be Elvira. With a short breath, she then asked her, "What strange magic is that? I have never seen it before. The speed of the cast alone is abnormal." Lucy didn't answer her question. While doing a repelling motion, she then told her to move aside. Although the motion looked very simple, but it immediately drew Elvira away and made her spit out a mouthful of blood. It was really too fast for her. She had been wondering about the mechanism, but it turned out that it was not a magic at all, but just raw mana that was released. Elvira could only sigh helplessly, realizing that the problem always lies in mana. Looking at Lucy, who walked slowly towards her, panic could not be seen on Elvira's face at all. With a big smile on her face, she then said to her, "Mages like you do have extraordinary mana resonance to create magic, but do you know, alchemists like us understand mana and turn it into something other than magic." Lucy then realized something after hearing that. Elvira continued, "For example, magic engineering items." Without Lucy realizing it, Elvira turned out to have spread various magic engineering items around her. But, Elvira's steps did not stop there. She then took out a potion and poured it into the magic engineering item. It was a crimson mana potion, which had the effect of absorbing a large amount of mana and making it fluid. The combination of these two things created a mana circuit that trapped Lucy in the middle. Seeing that her plan had succeeded, Elvira then said, "From now on, I will use your mana to power these magic engineering items: Cracks Mana Separator, Noise Generator, Elemental Regression Stimulator, Claw Hand, Wave Sphere, Illusion Disc, Catlon Mana Purifier. If I run them all at once with several times the usual output, every mana in this area will evaporate." With a melancholy smile, Elvira then thought, "The precious work I devoted my whole life to make, will all be destroyed." But, she felt that it was worth it. She knew that all the students were still not evacuated. The maids needed more time. Therefore, Elvira then challenged Lucy if she could break through all this. But, as the magic engineering items continued to absorb the mana released by Lucy, the magic engineering items suddenly showed signs of breaking down due to overload. They had exceeded the limit of mana they could contain. Elvira was then shocked to see that, and without even moving a finger, Lucy was able to destroy all of her proud masterpieces. Calculating the amount of mana needed to make all the magic engineering items overloaded, in theory it was possible, but no one had ever tried it, because there was no academic value in it. After all, they assumed that something with that much mana capacity could not exist. Even if it existed, stopping it was definitely classified into the realm of the impossible. Ophelis Hall Head Maid, Belle Maya, 4th-year Magic Faculty Top-Ranked Student, Traciana Bloom River, 4th-year Alchemy Faculty Top-Ranked Student, Dorothy Whitefelts, 14 Head Maids, and 2nd-year Alchemy Faculty Top-Ranked Student, Elvira Aniston. The time it took Lucy to subdue them all was only 3 minutes. Lucy then continued her steps as if nothing had happened, but, as she walked past Elvira, Elvira suddenly grabbed her leg and said, "You'll regret it if you keep going this way. With that much mana, you could have destroyed the entire Ophelis Hall from the start, but you decided not to. Isn't it because you have the same thoughts? Ed would never want this to happen." Lucy could only remain silent hearing that. Elvira's words seemed to be true, because Lucy did not refute it at all. Feeling something, Lucy then cast a magic. She said that it was something she would decide for herself after meeting Tanya. Right at this moment, the silhouette of someone suddenly appeared behind her, and attacked her using his sword, but fortunately Lucy was prepared in advance and could easily block his attack. Elvira looked very surprised when she saw that person. That person looked very scared at the moment. He felt that he was really crazy and out of his mind for doing such a reckless thing. That person was Clebius. His body was shaking violently as he waited for Lucy's counterattack. At this time, he then said to her that she shouldn't pass. The environment was suddenly silent for a moment at this time. Without saying anything to him, Lucy then focused her mana in her fingers, and threw it at Clebius with a snap of her fingers. The seemingly simple attack made Clebius be thrown far away and managed to make him seriously injured. second-year combat faculty top-ranked student, Clebius, the time it takes to subdue him is, 1 second. Lucy's face did not change at all when she saw that, as if this was a normal thing for her. Meanwhile elsewhere, Zix was engaged in a battle with Wade at the moment. He was determined to take Tanya away from him. Without further ado, Wade then immediately rushed to attack him. Seeing that, Zix then calmly took the rapier that was under him, and quickly blocked the attack that Wade threw at him. Not only that, Zix then launched a rapid succession of attacks that succeeded in overwhelming Wade in parrying them. Wade was then surprised to see that, seeing the ferocious attacks that Zix constantly threw at him, he wondered, is this the sword technique of the island family? But he immediately refuted that conjecture. This technique is too complicated and unusual. He then realized, this is a mixed technique developed by integrating the civilization of the island family residents, and the interpretation of the beasts roaming the northern plains, free-spirited but not completely detached from theory. It's practical combat swordsmanship, although it sounded strong, but Wade knew that his technique was still incomplete. The weight distribution was not balanced, so it left a gap. Seeing that wide open gap, Wade then focused his gaze there. He smiled very wide. He already considered that he had won, but Zix's gaze was still as calm as usual. Before his attack could land, Wade was then surprised when he saw the wind blade in Zix's hand. Zix then threw the wind blade to block his attack. Not only that, Zix also hit him quickly right in the face. It succeeded in making Wade's body thrown away. Seeing Wade lying on the ground, Zix then asked him, "Do you still want to continue?" Hearing that, Wade then tried to stand up. He chuckled and replied, "Of course, Senior Zix, I am a person who likes to fight with strong opponents. Getting a chance to fight someone as strong as Senior, how can I miss it?" Zix's attack did not seem to reduce Wade's fighting spirit. On the contrary, it even increased it. With a big smile, Wade then attacked him again and asked him to entertain him even longer. Zix could only sigh helplessly at that. He felt that Wade was really pathetic, while blocking his attack. Zix then gave him a fact: you don't enjoy fighting, you only enjoy winning, you are only excited about fights where you have a chance of winning. Zix then asked him, "I'm right, right?" His words just now seemed to shock Wade a lot. He confusedly asked, "What did you say?" Zix explained, "If you really want to fight a strong person, it should be among the second-year magic faculty students, not me that you choose. Because the top-ranked student of the second-year magic faculty is not me, but Lucy Merrill." Wade didn't know how to answer hearing that. He was then about to give an excuse, but Zix immediately cut off his words. "If you still make excuses like this, it means that this is your limit, you fucking coward." After saying that, Zix then increased his strength. Wade was surprised to see that, and before he could react, Zix then attacked him again. But fortunately Zix did not intend to kill him and immediately stopped his attack before it hit his neck. Seeing that, Wade knew that he had lost. He then released the grip of his sword. He asked him, "Then what was I supposed to do against an impossible opponent?" Wade felt that doing something like that was really stupid. Zix confirmed that, because that was your limit. But Zix's body then stiffened when he heard the sound of footsteps from behind him. The footsteps turned out to be from Lucy. She was already very close to their current location. Feeling something behind her, Lucy then looked back. The thing that has killed the most warriors in the world is arrogance. Charging in bravely and confidently, relying on one's skill. Beware of those who see it as a virtue. Do not revere those who constantly risk their lives to prove their worth to the world. Do not hold them in esteem. Feel fear. Clebius, fear is your weapon. Those were the words his father always said when he was a child, in contrast to his usual timid and easily surrendered nature. Clebius rose again to fight an opponent that was impossible to defeat. His father's words kept ringing in his head, "But as you live like that, a moment will come when your feet won't move forward. Even though you could run away as you've always done, there will be a time when your feet feel rooted to the ground, your whole body will tremble like crazy, yet strangely, the hand gripping your sword will hold firm. Even in the certainty of defeat, your body will move forward. Remember that sensation, my son, that's what Sinvision is." A very terrifying aura enveloped Clebius' entire body at this time that made him look like a demon coming out of hell. This might be the reason why he was once dubbed as the Sword Demon of the Nortondale family. Seeing Clebius look that was much different from usual, Elvira even had to wonder, was it really Clebius? While Lucy herself was still very calm at the moment, she then controlled Ed's bow, and shot and fire arrow towards him. it was an intermediate fire magic, pillar of fire, but it was not an ordinary pillar of fire, but a pillar of fire that had been doubled 100 times. The combination of the 100 intermediate fire magic presented a change in quality that burned down the place where Clebius was. Lucy did not forget her promise not to kill someone. The reason why she could do this was, it was because she was sure this attack would not be able to kill him. Lucy's pupils then dilated when she felt Clebius, who arrived quickly behind her. Lucy was surprised by Clebius's speed, which was getting faster, and when Clebius slashed his sword at her, the blessing of the storm then activated, which protected her from his attack. But the effect of the blessing of the storm was not just a barrier that protected her from all attacks, but also an attack magic that would blow away the enemy that attacked her with the wind. Even Clebius, who entered berserk mode, was unable to withstand the push of the wind it caused, but Clebius was then quickly able to regain his footing. Blood flowed all over his body at this time. His wound was getting worse. The blood that had stopped flowing and dried up, flowed again on top of it. If judging from the amount of blood that dried up, Clebius was in a state where he could faint at any time, but, along with the wounds getting worse and the body covered in blood, the mana that enveloped the sword as well as his body became bigger. The significant increase in power brought by this mode made Clebius able to launch multiple attacks quickly, which even made Lucy surprised, seeing the sword that was able to crack the barrier that was now protecting Lucy's body. There was no doubt that it was a cursed sword, the forbidden technique of the Nortendale family, blood swordsmanship. It was the swordsmanship that Clebius had practiced since childhood, which made him able to become as strong as he was now, so strong that he was able to crack the barrier protecting Lucy's body. But Lucy certainly wouldn't just stand by as he attacked her. Various magic circles then appeared around them when Lucy manipulated her mana. After that, Lucy then clenched her hand, which made the magic circles release a kind of projectile that attacked Clebius. But Lucy was then shocked. Even though he had been hit by such a strong attack, Clebius still had not fallen. On the contrary, he seemed to be getting stronger at this time. But Lucy certainly did not run out of ways. When Clebius' attack was about to destroy her barrier, Lucy then manipulated her mana and stuck her hand into Clebius' sword. Her movement was able to withstand the attack that Clebius threw at her. The impact produced by the clash of their attacks produced such a powerful effect that it seemed to be able to destroy the earth. The wound suffered by Clebius is now getting worse after the clash. Blood continues to flow from the wound he suffered. Blood swordsmanship uses blood flowing from the user's own body as a new source of mana. It is the ultimate taboo. As a result of learning this technique, Clebius was even shunned by his own family members. They nicknamed him Sword Demon. They were full of fear of him because he kept killing people. They cursed him and felt he was a ghost. They even wondered, why does the family keep producing monsters like him? They disliked him so much. They even opposed him to become the heir. At that moment, when everyone seemed to hate him, someone suddenly came to him and patted his shoulder. He said, "That's not true, you are not a monster, that person is his brother." While smiling warmly at him, his brother asked, "Right?" Clebius, after recalling these memories, Clebius then got up again. He was silent for a moment, then opened his eyes. A monster who had mastered blood swordsmanship, which was known as a taboo, the Sword Demon, Clebius Nortendale. The blood flowing from his wound did not weaken him. On the contrary, it was used as a driving force to strengthen his strength now. Recalling the question his brother asked him back then, Clebius had no choice but to admit it now, that he was a real monster. Seeing Clebius, who rushed back attacking towards her, Lucy then cast high-level lightning magic, divine punishment, while elsewhere, Zix was running with Tanya at this time. Seeing Tanya, who was exhausted, behind him, Zix then encouraged her. They were almost there, but Zix was then surprised when he saw someone showing the way in front of him. The person turned out to be Lortel. Lortel explained, "If you go out through the door at the end of this corridor, you can escape." Zix was then surprised when he saw her here. He then immediately put on a cautious attitude, not caring about his change of attitude. Lortel continued, "There are many blocked paths. You are lucky, Tanya. You should thank Zix for accompanying you." Hearing that, Zix then hesitantly called out to Lortel. He asked, "Did you hear anything about Ed Sr.?" Lortel smiled. Hearing that, she said that she was not sure. Hearing that, Zix then once again asked, "If not with me, what would you do to Tanya if she was alone?" Lortel was silent for a moment. Hearing that, with a sharp look in her eyes, she then replied, "Of course I would tear her apart and kill her." Hearing that, Zix then tried to calm her down. he said that it was not a wise course of action. Lortel agreed with that. She felt that instead of killing her right away, it was better to start from her nails first, although she did not know what she would confess. Hearing that, Tanya then frantically denied her accusation. She never did that. Seeing Tanya's frightened face, Zix then immediately calmed her down, but, in that tense moment, Lortel suddenly told them to leave. She said to Zix, "After all, I can't beat you in battle, right?" But Zix didn't lower his guard at all after hearing that. He confusedly thought, "You'll let me go because you can't win?" Armed with his strong instincts, Zix's body suddenly stiffened at this time. As everyone in Sylvania knows, making Lortel Ketchel your enemy is a foolish act. As soon as this girl shows her hostile aura, you can't even imagine what is behind that door. Zix is really confused at this time. What should he do? Every second that passed in the middle of his contemplation made Zix's worries become deeper. But what Zix didn't realize at the moment was, why was he still alive? In these few minutes where he stopped and contemplated, he should have been defeated by an invincible enemy. Elvira really couldn't bear the sight in front of her at the moment. She pleaded with him that it was enough. "How many times have you been hit by high-level lightning magic?" But Clebius did not heed her plea at all. He still continued to get up even though he had been repeatedly hit by that powerful magic. He then recalled the words of his brother. With a warm smile, his brother at that time said to him, "Don't blame yourself too much. It's the fault of those who challenged you to test your strength, so it's not your fault." While showing a painting to him, his brother told him to look at it carefully. "You are not a curse." His brother then explained the events in the painting to him. With troops coming like mountains, heroes who invaded with unshakable confidence, our ancestors, Virtus Nortendale, is the power that protects our family. If you have that power, maybe you can also be a hero like him. Clebius then got back up after remembering his brother's words. He cursed. He felt his brother had been wrong. With Lucy who again cast a high-level magic to attack him, Clebius then rushed back to attack her. In the Nortendale family, there lives a sword demon. No matter how much he pretends to be human, when he loses his mind, the surroundings will become a sea of blood. For a monster with eyes that emit red light and destroy the surroundings, ancient concepts such as morality do not apply to him. As Lucy cast divine punishment towards him, Clebius, who had read the direction of her attack, then jumped to avoid it, and quickly arrived in front of her to attack her. But Lucy was still very calm when she saw that. She then used her extraordinary mana to once again attack towards him. But Lucy's calmness was then broken, when her attack earlier did not succeed in knocking out Clebius. But Clebius' movement suddenly stopped when his sword was only 1 inch away from beheading her. He disappointedly asked, "With this power, you think I can become a hero?" The incident that became a deep trauma for Clebius suddenly appeared in his head at this time. It was when he killed his brother, the only sibling who loved him, with his own hands, even though his brother's sword was stuck right in his chest at this time. But he was grateful. He was grateful because at least the person Clebius killed this time was not someone else. At least he could forgive him. He then gently hit his brother's chest, and said to him, "So, don't blame yourself too much." Clebius could not stem his tears seeing that the real hero had died that day, in the hands of a monster. Clebius could only curse. This time, he really couldn't take it anymore. Clebius didn't want to be a hero, he just didn't want to be a monster. Clebius then fell to the ground, accompanied by the breaking of the cursed sword he was holding. The scene suddenly fell silent for a moment with Clebius' defeat, even though he was unable to defeat Lucy. Seeing the students who were successfully evacuated, Clebius was grateful. He wondered, this should be enough, right? Clebius is in critical condition at this time. Blood is seen covering his entire body. This blood swordsmanship increases the magical power of the sword and the user's body as the wounds and blood that cover the sword increase. But ironically, the closer the user is to death, the stronger the power he gets. Even so, that astonishing power was only able to make a slight scratch on Lucy. However, whether it's the complacency of the strong or the will of the weak, in that one fleeting moment, he was almost able to kill her. For Lucy, who has always lived as the strong, she has never been used to this feeling. The fear of death that she felt for the first time, made her sure that she had to immediately kill that weak figure who had no intention or strength to fight anymore. But, before Lucy could land her attack, someone suddenly threw a water magic at her. Lucy then shocked looked at the person. Seeing the person, Clebius could only complain. He had expected this, that he was still alive. The person was wrapped in a cloak with a bow in his hand. the person was certainly Ed. Clebius then swore at him.